You good?
The bourbon?
The bourbon.
Oh, it was very good. It was too good. Just give me hot flashes.
I still need some tips. We got to add one more thing to it besides the coffee and the bourbon to make it the Detroit brew or something. I want the Irish coffee of Detroit.
Oh.
I want the Mexican coffee of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you, breakfast brew is going to be a thing. Hey, everybody. We're back for Block Notes.
Oh, hello.
Hello. The show after the show.
Yeah, this one was a tough one, man. Like as information was coming in, I wanted to take notes, but then as I was taking notes, I was trying to listen to you, and I'm listening to you, and then I have a question, so I'm like, quick, okay, write down the question, so I don't forget it, because I'm trying to learn, and man.
Yeah, I feel like there was probably like 50 spots, so I paused. I was like, she should be asking a question here. I know. I'm just wrapping my brain around it. I know.
Yeah.
I know somebody's got a question here. Did you have questions? We got. She won't come on camera, but we had in the studio today Miriam, key personnel for our operations at Detroit Blockchain Center.
Love to be here.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
We started talking about tokenomics, and I know that when we do that, they're usually broken into three things. And you could tell me yes or no. First is the token economics. Duh. The token distribution and the token governance. Is that right or no?
Yeah, those are some of the key points you have to consider on a high level. It's like we started talking about distribution on the show, right? So Bitcoin's distribution was, the distribution happens in the Coinbase, the block reward. It started with 50, then cuts in half every 4 years. Next one is around next April, right? We'll be down to like 3 point, whatever half of 6.25 is, 3 point whatever, 125. But that's considered very fair distribution because Satoshi mined the first block. He on purpose, so that's the Genesis block, and then he locked it. So even though he won those 50 Bitcoin, they're unspendable, right? That very first Bitcoin issued was unspendable because he was like, I'm the first one who mined it. I'm assuming this is why. So I don't know that there's a written statement of him, but I'm assuming the statement was, I'm starting it. I want this to be a fair distribution. I don't want anybody to say I had this unfair advantage, and then paused mining. So while he could have kept mining future blocks, he paused it until at least one other node entered the ecosystem, which was like Hale Finney, I believe, which was like on January 9th, which is why January 9th is one of the birth dates of Bitcoin, because it's the first time a second node came on and the mining kicked on. And now, from that point, if you were willing to take the risk on this thing that was worth zero, right, with zero future promise, and spend some electricity on it, that's your distribution model. A rub for a lot of Bitcoin-only people with a platform like Ethereum was that Ethereum isn't really viewed to be a fair distribution on its initial supply. So Ethereum was put together. I think there's a really good book by Laura Shin, I think, what's it called, The Ethereans or something, so I recommend anybody read that. That sort of goes into how that early stages of Ethereum really worked. But it's like, all right, you have these core investors or contributors who got some pre-seed. Before Ethereum was launched officially, they already had some Ethereum. You had some VCs that were funding it because everybody's like, oh, look at this, the next new Bitcoin. Bitcoin's now a thing. Like, Bitcoin had value now, right? Went through, I think, at least one bull market. It went through at least one bull market, maybe two, by the time Ethereum started really working. And so a rub for early Bitcoiners was, that's not fair distribution, right? Now, the Ethereum answer to that is, well, yeah, we have this many, but remember, it's not a limited supply like Bitcoin. And so they've always planned to be proof of stake, but they were proof of work first. And proof of work was the fair distribution model. Anybody could join the proof of work and earn yourself some Bitcoin. And they changed the hashing algorithm, the consensus algorithm a little bit. So it was easier to mine Ethereum than it was to mine Bitcoin. So it was really more accessible for people to mine Ethereum than it was to mine Bitcoin, especially once you talk about like 2015, 16, 17, and onwards. So there you have fair distribution. Now you have proof of stake. So there was an opportunity for a lot of people to get in and accumulate their own Ethereum without having to buy it. But that was their distribution model. Some places use airdrops. I might want to launch my own project. And I say, look, if I'm building some kind of DeFi project. If you used any Ethereum layer 1 DeFi protocol, because it's all transparent, so I just pluck your addresses, or this other ecosystem, Cosmos ecosystem, right? If you've used that DeFi on that ecosystem at all, and I can find those wallets, all those wallets, I've whitelisted. There's 1 million tokens to begin with. That's a really low number for most of these projects. There's 1 billion tokens or more, which is more realistic. On the initial supply, our core developers will keep 5% of those. Our VCs will keep 10% of those. And then the other 85% will get airdropped to everybody who's ever used some kind of ecosystem. That's how they try to deal with like fair distribution. So how you distribute it matters. Whether any of those are good or work, I don't think anybody could ever do the Bitcoin model again because nobody knew or cared about Bitcoin. It was the first of its kind. And then what was the other when you had the distribution and the
governance?
The governance model. Yeah, what does governance even mean? Like, technically, there is no governance model in Bitcoin. It's purely raw, community-driven. Technically speaking, Ethereum's the same way. The only real point of contention there is you have key players people listen to. Bitcoin was, again, blessed out of circumstance because Satoshi walked away. And that was the only person. At one point, if you wanted to upgrade Bitcoin, you wanted to add something to it, you basically sent it to him through a mailing list. Like, and he would decide what gets. Now, he always used community consensus. If the community liked it, he would insert it. But he had sort of singular control. And everybody just sort of, this is your project. We know it's open source and all that. But, if you say it, we'll go with it. Ethereum still suffers from that. You got Vitalik. You have Consensus and ETH Foundation, Lubin, all these core initial players that are still involved in Ethereum where technically Ethereum's decentralized. Nobody has to listen to any of them, but it's like, all right, you're Vitalik. You're like, if you say it, so I'm dumb. I'm just going to go with what you say if you say it.
Yeah.
And that
if they walked away, if those key players that you're talking about, if they kind of like walked away and were like altruistic about it, do you think that would make it definitely more secure? Do you think it would put it like on the same level, so to say, as like Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a nobody, but my personal opinion is if Vitalik was like, I'm leaving Ethereum and the blockchain system, maybe not forever, but I'm not coming back for a long, long time. I'm not going to state any written opinion. I'm not going to have an opinion. I'm stepping away, and I'm going to go mess with AI. He's a smart dude. He can do pretty much whatever he wants to.
Yeah.
So if he was like, I'm going to find a way to do public artificial intelligence because that's taken off. I think that's the best thing that could ever happen for Ethereum.
Do you think he knows that?
Does he know that?
Should we tell him?
I think he's a smart dude. Sometimes you're too smart for your own good. But I think he probably knows that. He's just not interested in doing it.
All right, let me ask you another question. So tokenomics, besides like creating the incentive of using it and all that stuff, I feel like there's a lot of people coming up with their own tokenomics that is just all the way out there. Are there ways, let me see how I can ask. Are there certain circumstances where you can actually use tokenomics and it actually makes sense? For example, like there's a lot of gaming platforms that are using tokenomics, but do we need them? I mean, we already have game coins and all that stuff. Now how is that tokenomics coming in there?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is part, if you're going to design a big argument for NFTs in Web3 is like the game space, but you've had economics and game economies forever. Second Life, Minecraft. I just learned one of the Star Wars video games had its own little like land thing. They didn't need blockchain or, tokenomics to do anything because they're more like reward points. But, the old story of how Ethereum started with Vitalik was based around video games. The exact accuracy of this story I'm not vouching for. Go ask Vitalik. But it was pretty much, he woke up one day after playing World of Warcraft for years and spending all these hours invested into it. And then World of Warcraft was like, yeah, we're sort of resetting the whole game design. Everything you worked on, gone. And he's like, that's fucked.
Yeah.
And he was a Bitcoiner. He used to be like the editor of Bitcoin magazine, right? He wanted Ethereum on Bitcoin, and he wanted the smart contract tool because of that whole World of Warcraft thing. So gaming is a big reason why we have a lot of the systems we have now. But part of tokenomics and part of economics is if you're going to design a blockchain-based game or a game that utilizes blockchain tech or crypto or NFTs or any kind of whatever, what is the incentive as a business to have cross-platform tradability, right? If I create NBA Live, why do I want my game to be cross-compatible with Red Dead Redemption, right? If I'm not the same game developer, and I'm such a non-gamer, I could have named a game that were two games that were by the same developer. But if they have different developers, right? Why do I want to help the competition by having this unilateral asset between both? You know what I mean? I'm losing part of my value extraction.
Well,
piece.
maybe it's like at a convenience for the customer or the gamer.
If you can think of any large-scale business that ever made it by their initial thing is a convenience for the customer. Their ongoing sustainability is never, it's how do I get you in a walled garden and then extract all the value humanly possible.
Well, maybe the tides are shifting.
Maybe. But that's probably very bad economic design up front. Even if that's your intended goal, you have to still think of competitors, right? We talked about game theory a little bit in the podcast. I'm a huge fan of competitive game theory when it comes to economics. I'm not so much a fan for most circumstances on cooperative game theory. I like the concept. One thing and just in my life, totally subjective, one thing I can always bank on is people will act in their own economic interests. 10 out of 10 times. People will state their altruistic interests, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes down to like, all right, you're an altruist, you want to help everybody, you want to do whatever, you get to eat today, or you can help 5 people eat. But you ain't eating 5 days either. They're going for themselves almost every time, right? So I would prefer build a system that embraces that for the betterment of the world than a system that hopes that, well, maybe if enough people do it, like the voting, you talked about governance. Apathy is real. People don't vote. Between this last election and when Obama first won in the U.S., right? These were like the highest turnout elections of all time in American history. It was like 50% of the eligible public came out and voted. For the most important 2 elections, depending on who you're asking, right? Of all time, half the people came out and voted.
Yep.
Now you want them to come out and vote for your video game platform? So how do you... I'm not saying this so don't do anything. I'm just saying that's part of your economic design.
So where have you seen tokenomics used that would make, I don't know, not sense, but where have you seen it used where you're like, oh, that is a great use for tokenomics. That is not just something that we've been using.
The security? What did
Shameless plug. We, Detroit Blockchain Center, are actively working on the Last Mile project. And part of what that project consists of is using this blockchain software called Althea. The specific thing is Althea Key LTE. That is a project that when I first discovered it in late 2018 or really early 2019, that was a tokenomics system that made sense because they were, what's the right word? I keep saying altruistic, and that's not that. They were
agnostic.
Agnostic.
There you go.
Agnostic. Thank you. Breakfast bourbons. This is why we need them every Sunday. They were agnostic to payment platforms, right? You needed a crypto-based system because you have to do micropayments, and you can't do micropayments with fiat or gold or other things. So you got to have micropayments in a trustless way, a permissionless way, a censorship-resistant way, and they were very altruistic. They were very agnostic to what that system was. So that's one system. I encourage everybody to go look at the Althea platform to see sort of how they're building. And they're building future parts to that continue that sort of thread. They're doing a lot of building within the Cosmos system, but again, part of the economic design is you can just plug and play this, or because it's open source, you can download it and change it. They're building a whole ecosystem on the Cosmos base. You could just download the software and be like, screw Cosmos, I want to use Avalanche. Now you got to do some coding and changing, but you can make it wherever you want to do. That strong economic incentive, I think they've really thought through a lot of those economic designs. And not to say they're the only ones, but they're part of that 0.05 I mentioned when I say beyond Bitcoin, what projects are good. That's one of them. And there's others. You have privacy coins. They have their own economic thing. I have slight issue with them, but you have like Monero, Zcash, Dash, which are all basically some kind of Bitcoin. None of them are forks, but like Bitcoin clones or modifications off of the core Bitcoin protocol that take privacy preservance further in their economic design than Bitcoin does. Bitcoin takes a strong stance that your core base money has to be transparent first, and you build privacy on. They take the opposite stance. You got to build privacy first, and work everything else there. So that's part of the economic design things that you could be looking for and at.
All right, maybe one more question for me, and then I will stop.
Don't stop, can't stop.
Yeah.
You should have been just on the show.
I know.
We're going to get her on camera one day, folks.
Next time. So, what do you think about tokenomics implemented in, let's see, cities maybe? Or is that maybe too big?
No, but I don't really know what you mean by tokenomics in the
so
city.
So do you think each city or county could come up with their own tokenomics governance and distribution and come up with a way for the community to benefit off of that?
Yeah, I feel like you're like setting up alley-oops for me here. But first, I will say that they already do it. This is the whole job of a city management, right? Your mayor's office, your city councils, your reps, is to how do I keep this economic flow going, especially in a city. Because the whole point of a city is you have people close together, and economies tend not to really happen where there's no people. You can't really go in the middle of like the Sahara and just be like, here's an economy, because there's no people, right?
Would this be something like a city token?
Well, yes, but that's what I'm saying. It's like they already have to do that. So the only thing a city or a county or a state or city, rural has to do is there some place in our current economic design that works where using some kind of crypto or blockchain-based or web-based, Web3-based thing makes it more efficient or more transparent or more trustless? I've been tasked with finding a different word besides trustless, so Shout out to anybody who can leave something in the comments that describes trustless
Would
without
you
saying
also
those
say
words.
that like aligns incentives better too?
Yeah, could align incentives better. A lot of things. These are the things that are like any sound-based crypto project has that game theory, and game theory is about aligning incentives. You got to figure out what people's incentives are, and then try to build rules. That's why it's a game, right? Like, what is that economic game they play that best aligns incentives? You know, sometimes it makes sense if you have a McDonald's to build a Burger King right across the street. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. You don't want to have McDonald's and a Burger King right across the street, right? Or for the consumer, you know, you do want that because now they're going to always fight against each other for pricing because they both want the business for the exact same type of food, burger. So who's going to give me the best quality at the cheapest price? Gas stations do it all the time, right? That's all game theory stuff, aligning incentives.
Yeah.
It's a problem with politics. You know what I mean? You have countries like the U.S. that have two political systems. I, as a voter, can only pick one, but let's say a third candidate pops up. My dilemma is I like the third candidate, but only two parties ever win certain election cycles, like governors and presidencies and mostly senates and, you know, House of Reps. So I like this third person, but I'm going to throw my vote away if I vote for them. It's a good moral stand, but it doesn't get nothing done.
Yeah.
And I have this whole dilemma thing. How could you align those? You can do this without blockchain, for the record. But how can I align my incentives where I don't feel like I'm wasting my vote away? And in crypto, it's not talking about politics, but a really good project I like is Get Grants. It's on the Ethereum project. They fund public goods through quadratic voting, quadratic funding. So it's like you're more incentivized to be a low contributor. Maybe I only got $5 to contribute versus $5,000. But as a project building something for the public good, that altruistic thing, I get more money if I can get more low cap donors to support than I would get if I got a few large cap donors to support. I make more money for getting 50 $10 contributors than I do for getting three $5,000 contributors. Yeah, it is. The math and all that. So like that's a good example of aligning incentives, building good game theory, economic design, in my opinion. But yeah, that's yes.
Ashley, I know you had a couple questions during. Do you have any?
Well, I'm just kind of like analyzing what you guys are saying, and it seems that like where something doesn't seem possible or it doesn't fit our current systems or molds, and like we kind of never really thought would be possible, it seems that these tokenomics and game theory things using crypto and the blockchain are like kind of solving those issues. It's just an observation that I had. Like, for example, the micropayments that would never really work using like the USD. I mean, it might, but
well, yeah. Once they go into CBDCs and you have a real, remember, we don't have crypto economies are the only ones that have anything close to a real digital dollar, natively digital money, right? Cash App, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo. Those are electronic payment systems, but at the end of the day, you're still using traditional banking. Right, that's why it takes like 10 to 14 days for settlement and whatnot. Crypto is the only real digital money we have, but governments are rapidly moving towards these central bank digital currencies. That would be their version of digital money. And, you know, you could do pretty much everything you can do with a crypto-based asset, you could do with a CBDC. The difference is, and this is the thing, like this is part of that revolution, come for the rich, stay for the revolution part.
Nate.
The critical part is who do you want all in your business in controlling every aspect of economic activity, right? With Bitcoin, right, is a fully transparent pseudonymous system. It is not anonymous. I know governments some people in government like to be like, oh, well, we can't have this or you'll get money laundering and all that. Except everybody who does like any kind of major crime on Bitcoin gets caught because of Bitcoin. It's that transparent, right? So it's not good for that. It's good for compliance type things, but you can have pseudonymy. You can do peer-to-peer. It is permissionless. It is censorship resistance. You can go full privacy by going to something like Monero or like a Zcash or something. You can't check. You're not confident of the supply, so the economic thing might be different, but you can have that privacy. And you can go from Bitcoin as your store of value to a Monero for your daily transaction and privacy and back really easy using decentralized tools, right? But put your government in there. And I've literally heard like central bank and central treasury department heads say this. Like they are going to account for every penny you use. They're going to look, because we're already all tied on online already, right? Yeah. They're going to look and be like, we noticed your Apple Watch says your heart rate has changed on an average from this to this. That's indicative of somebody who has too high of a sugar intake. We have a national objective to make sure our citizenry stays as healthy as possible and reduces the public burden of healthcare costs. Therefore, because you fit this profile, you are no longer allowed to buy sugared foods except for in this quantity.
Because they're a liability to the government.
Work. Yeah, and your money just won't work because you're using government money.
We're fighting
like,
at that point.
I want, Miriam brought us these great donuts this morning.
Yep.
And imagine if she had hit this, if you ever see her, she physically, she's not going to hit this, but they're going to be like, oh, your sugar intake's way too high. And it's like, no, what do you mean you're buying a dozen donuts? You get one. You have a 1 donut a month allocation.
Nope.
And like there are literally people in government, like the manager of the Bank of England or something like that. He literally came out and said it, like, yeah, we can know every penny and control every penny every citizen spends. They're geeked about this. So you can't do micropayments. And we're going to have 2 options. You can use this sort of open, decentralized version, or you can use these CBDCs. And this is a real battle that's going to happen. And if we have too much apathy on the consumer side, central bank money is going to be real easy. When the U.S. government wants to hand out COVID checks part 2 because of whatever new pandemic with a CBDC, all that paperwork stuff out the window. They push a button, it's pushed right to your wallet. You got the money. Doesn't matter about your tax return and all that stuff. So,
well, they're still going to have to.
But yeah,
they're still going to have to download the wallet and figure out how it works. So it might work against them.
Well, no, because I mean, if you're using Bitcoin, you still got to download a wallet and figure out how it works. So it's this exact same.
Well,
learning
that's what
ramp.
I'm saying. If the government's like, hey, I'm going to give you some free money, let's learn how to do it. You could be like, yeah, you could like, okay, now that you've learned that, you can either use this programmable money or you can just use some Bitcoin.
There's a balance. At one point, we're going to be so far down the rabbit hole, it's going to look like those dystopian movies. You're going to have people who are very, very purist. I'd like to think myself as one of them, but you never know until you actually hit that moment.
Yeah.
But now we're living in the sewers underground using our free money because we're free peoples, but we live in the slums of slums, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's real world use cases that are so far going well for the whole peer-to-peer movement. You have Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. Their whole system is very centralized in government. I'm not trying to say like their government's malicious or whatever with their intent, but they have like their Churro wallet or whatever. That was a government-issued wallet backed by a centralized entity that's helping them do it. And again, they might all have the best intent in mind, but it's still government controlled. Usage on that is low. Usage on the open source public networks, once people got the money, is rising. That's a good sign. You have countries like a couple countries in Africa, Nigeria, and one other one I can't remember off the top of my head. They just pushed for the CBDC. They started their own CBDC, and it's like less than 0.5% of people actively use it. They're resisting it. They don't want that level of control. But then you got like China, who's got a CBDC.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like you said that in El Salvador, the government has theirs, but the usage is down. But on the open source ones, the usage is up. So like
It's a good sign.
they've made it like national news, so to say, and so they're like, oh, okay, well, our government thinks it's a good idea, so maybe I will learn about it, but I don't want to use theirs. I'll use one that's more safe, like in terms of like for me for futures.
I wish everybody thought like that. I doubt that's the mindset, though.
Oh, dang.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, just think about. I mean, anybody who's listening to this podcast, on this podcast, or got referred to this podcast, you're already in a network.
Brought donuts to the podcast.
Or brought donuts to the podcast. You're already in a network of people who are adversely thinking.
Yeah.
Right? That's not most people. Most people aren't part of the revolution.
Yeah,
most people
true.
weren't part of the Roman Revolution. Most people weren't part of the American Revolution. Most people weren't part of the Civil Rights Revolution. A very small percentage of people. Most people want to spend time with their families and loved ones and have everybody else leave them alone.
Yeah.
Right? And whatever I got to do that, fine. But I don't care about all the rest of it. This is why people are so stressed out over social media.
Yeah.
It's not that there's a whole bunch of new things that are happening that's never happened before. You have access to information you never had access to before.
Yeah.
So it seems like this big ramp up. And even then, people don't care. So if you take an El Salvador situation, and I'm thinking theoretically because I don't know, but if you talk about your average person in El Salvador from the information I've gathered, they don't care one way or the other. My thing is, I need rice tonight for dinner. Can I get it? If you give me the El Salvadorian dollar, which is they're dollarized, so they use dollars. If you give me the dollar, can I get that? And if I'm saving my wealth in dollars, can I buy as many eggs this week as I could 3 weeks ago with that same dollar? If the answer is yes, I'm good. If the answer is no, I need something better. You tell me the Bitcoin thing works, I'm going to see. But most places, against Bitcoin, most places aren't using Bitcoin. They're using stable coins. People still want dollars. They just don't have access to it. They go through hyperinflation like Argentina, and they put on capital control so you can't access dollars. And then the people are like, they still want dollars, but crypto gives them an avenue to get dollars without going through banks and KYC and government. I can just get dollars. Tron, I think, is the number one stablecoin network in the world. It's the most like centralized crap protocol that we talk about tokenomics. The tokenomics of Tron severely only benefit the creator of Tron. And I say creator very loosely because he like copy and pasted Ethereum. And then like, how can I funnel all this to me? But fees are really cheap. He understood that about tokenomics. Fees are cheap. People don't care about all the rest of it. Can I get access to $1? Here you go. Now, they can probably get rug pulled at any point. Justin Sun can just like take all their money without a question. But
Yikes.
again, people aren't thinking that far into the economics. They're just thinking,
Like day
what's
to day.
going to help me today?
I honestly think with this whole tokenomics and blockchain, just in general, a lot of people are learning about different avenues that are just old but introduced in a new way, just because this is a whole new industry. And I really like that because I am learning more, to be honest with you. I'm learning more just in general about all of the different types of things that we deal day to day, but in more depth now because of this new industry. And I really like it. But, you know, some people are thinking this is a new thing, just like you were saying. And it is scary because now you're learning, you know, when you get to the basics and the foundation of things and how everything works, you're like,
And has worked.
Yeah. You're like, whoa, what is this? So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there on that. Like I said, I talk to people a lot who want to get into this area, but they feel like they either need to be a day trader or they need to be some kind of super developer. And it's like, no, we need everything from marketing to how do laws look like when you don't have an actual counterparty, right? And economics. How do economics work when you can't default to a centralized authority? Or that centralized authority is a decentralized entity like a DAO, a true autonomous DAO. And then, like, how does AI play into this? AI is changing the world over the past 5-6 months, right? And we're not even at a real AI. We're like at a text predictor model, and we're blown back.
Yeah.
So how do you set these systems up? So we need thinkers and people around all of this. So now is a chance. Maybe you didn't go to college. Maybe you don't have a PhD, but you're into all this. Start doing some research and write some papers. You know, you don't need a PhD to.
What do you mean, write some papers? Like an article?
Well, yeah, we need research. So, like we talk about tokenomics. If you go to, I gave people during the show homework assignments. So if you listen to the block note, here's your homework assignment, right?
Another one.
Here's another. It's really easy. Look up your the biggest university nearby, right? Look up their tokenomics course. You want a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD in tokenomics. Look that up.
Okay, I feel like it's a trick question.
It's not, well.
Look it up and do what, though?
Well,
just look at it?
Find it. I challenge you to find it.
Okay.
It doesn't exist. It's a real thing, and there might be there might be a handful of universities globally who actually offer an actual, this is how economics work without looking at a central authority, especially using some kind of blockchain or crypto economic scheme. It's economics, right? But it's game theory is new, and you've heard me talk about game theory a few times. Nash created game theory. There's like a movie on him. Not very accurate movie to my understanding, but anyway, there's a movie on him. This is like, you're talking about like 1950s or 60s. Economics have been around for thousands of years. Game theory is 50, 70 years old, right? It's such a small thing. He created this whole new economic model. So just like he just did that, even though economics is thousands of years old, we're here again. You can contribute to this economic theory. So research needs to be done. You need to study projects. Now we're in a really golden era of blockchain and crypto, because when I first got into this and started talking about it, everything was theory. You had Bitcoin, which was 99% speculative, and then you had everything else. Now you actually have use cases. There are projects I can point to. I just pointed to Althea. You have like web browsers like Brave. You have actual DeFi like Uniswap. You have lending like Aave. You have Lightning Network on Bitcoin. You have Taro that's getting built on Bitcoin. You have all these different protocols and things that you can actually use today, right? And you can look. I say it's the golden era because you can be like, well, here's Dentacoin, which severely failed. Why? Do some research on why it failed. What were the economics of this that made it not work? You got Acoin project. Why has that succeeded or failed? You got this project. Why has that succeeded or failed? There's no information out there for people. So if I'm starting a new project, I need research. I got nothing to research. I got to do it all myself. I can't read your paper. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for people just to do basic research stuff and get on and be a predominant voice if you find trends and things that work, things that don't work. Why'd they fail? There's a lot of opportunity for a lot of different people to do a lot of different things.
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yep. So, yeah, go find all the universities that have a specific tokenomics or token economics or crypto economics, however it's named. Find that and then let us know. I wanted to go hit us up on Twitter or maybe
Facebook,
TikTok, whatever you're on. I'm only on Twitter, so I won't see the rest, but Ashley will, Miriam might. So go hit us up and let us know what you find so we can tell people where they can go to find their actual tokenomics courses.
Education.
Yep. And if you're writing papers on it, send it to us so we can read it and then talk about it
Yep.
in Tokenomics 2.0.
Yep.
All right.
Which will probably be happening.
Probably be happening.
I'm gonna go do my homework right now.
There it is. All right, y'all. I think that sort of
Yeah.
wraps us up for today. So peace out. Relax your brains.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll check y'all in a couple weeks. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.